Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome, Sam, to Carve Your Own Fucking Path. Thank you for hopping on the podcast from Tulum. Very jealous. So Sam has a lengthy title. You are many things. So, we don't want to put you in a box. You are a thought leader, speaker, author, corporate culture consultant, and a men's coach. I have so many questions for you, but let's start with a little bit about, or a lot about the path that you were on previously. So I know that's a big question, but what path were you on before, you arrived here? Give us a snapshot.
Awesome. Yes, we can cover that. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Awesome to be talking to you. And hello from Tulum and to Lisbon. Not a bad place either.
Sure.
So the path I was on, if there was one word to describe it, it was running and destruction. Was a path that I had been on basically for my entire life until about 8 years ago. And it started with, from the second I was born, I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my head, so I wasn't breathing from the moment I was born. So I had an emergency C-section. So basically I was, from day one, I was fighting for breath. And so for me, that gave me, I was just, as soon as I came into this world, I was just downloaded with this unsafety program. The world is unsafe. I'm unsafe. I need safety. I need to search for safety. And that morphed into a story of mine that love equaled being saved for me. So like all this, so growing up, after coming into the world not breathing, three things that I created and manifested for myself were asthma, food allergies, and I had a propensity to choke on my food when I was a kid. So all three of those things, asthma, obviously the lungs, food allergies, your throat swells up, can't breathe, and then choking, something's lodged in your throat. So I had this was how I was kind of brought into the world, was this, I can't breathe. Breathing is not hard for me. And breathing is a basic human function. So for me, I was like, I'm terrible at breathing. I must be broken. So I need to be saved in order, if you're not saving me, I'm not lovable. So I basically went through most of my life creating reasons for people to save me, whether that's girlfriends, jobs, drugs and alcohol, my parents, whatever it was. I was always looking to be saved as proof of love, because that's how I felt lovable, was, if I needed something to be wrong with me in order to be lovable. And so what that led to, that path I was on, was, first of all, constantly looking for safety as a kid, constantly running, constantly, so there's a difference between vigilance and observance. And Peter Crone actually said it best. I heard him on a podcast a few weeks ago. He said that when he was really young, he lost his parents and he had to be really vigilant. And vigilance is observance, but based in fear. Whereas observance is more of just based in love and witness of kind of what's going on around you. So I had this massive amount of vigilance that was always, head on a swivel, looking around, what threat's coming next? Is it going to be a pollen in the spring? Is it going to be a peanut in a cake that I don't see? And, I spent 3, maybe 4 or 5 weeks a year in the hospital growing up until I was about 15. from either asthma attacks, food allergies, whatever it was. Like there was like when I was younger, like there's no way an 8-year-old kid with an asthma attack should be able to drive himself to the hospital to basically save himself. So I had this program in me that like I needed saving in order, if I was to survive, I needed saving. And so fast forward that through my whole life until I was in my early 40s, like one of the ways it manifested itself a lot was in relationships. And so I would say, the contract that I would kind of lay down when I fell in love with a girl, we fell in love, like there was definitely love there and I loved them. But the subconscious underlying contract of that was, okay, I love you and you love me. Great. Now I am your responsibility. If I get in trouble, if something's wrong with me, and I will create things to be wrong with me, you need to save me to prove to me that you love me. And so that's clearly destructive and always ended in heartbreak.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that did save me was tennis. So when I was really young, I was really withdrawn as a kid, really withdrawn socially because I was so scared. Like in Vermont, I grew up in Vermont. So a lot of like birthday parties were in barns where there's a lot of farm animals and hay. And that to me meant big threat, red lights going off. Like I'm probably going to die if I go there. And so I would avoid these parties and I developed this really bad social anxiety that basically followed me until I was 38 years old. And so when I found tennis, I always say this, it was my my savior and my first love. And so I fell in love with tennis. Tennis fell in love with me. I ended up being really good at it. Everything about it was perfect. Having asthma and like that, the breathing was always a question. If I was playing soccer or baseball or basketball, it was always like, oh my gosh, like running around all the time. Like I'm definitely going to have an asthma attack or use my inhaler at some point in this game. And it's going to be a problem for my teammates and a problem for me. And people are going to look at me and I'm going to be different. And, it was a fate worse than death, really. So tennis was an individual sport. So there's no one else to worry about. And also it allows for constant breaks. You run around for 30 seconds, then you take a break, change sides, all those things. So I just dove into tennis, and tennis, it got me to a high school in Florida, a tennis academy, and then it got me a college scholarship. And it was kind of my identity. Like I was a tennis player, and it was the number one thing in my life. Like I was dead set on following Andre Agassi's footsteps into being a professional tennis player. That was my thing. That was going to happen. Like school didn't matter. College didn't matter. I went to college, not for the education, but for the tennis. And so after my senior year of college, the tennis coach called me into his office and was like, he's like, so Sam, he's like, I think that it's the best interest of you and the tennis team if you don't play tennis anymore. He's like, it's nothing against you as a person, but you were just burnt out on tennis. And basically I had been playing tennis every day since I was 8 years old. And I, in the back of my head, I was like, oh no. But I was also like, he's right. Like I was way more interested in the social scene at this point. Just like I kind of figured out there's a life outside of tennis at this point. And I was like, I was burnt out on tennis. I knew it was kind of in my head now at this point that if I was going to be a professional tennis player, I would have to give up and sacrifice a lot of my life that I had learned to love to take that to the next level. And I'm like, I just wasn't interested in doing that.
Okay.
So end of my tennis career basically there. I played a couple like adult tournaments after college, kind of semi-pro tournaments, but it was just kind of hanging on to a tennis career that was already gone. And so what I was really doing was hanging on to my identity. I didn't realize it at the time, but like tennis was, it was my whole entire focus until that point. And so when tennis went away, I was lost. Like I had gone to college for tennis, so I didn't focus on college, to be honest. Like I didn't focus on like my major was sports management, and I didn't focus on that. And so I get out of college and I'm like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I got a job at a bank, and then as tennis fell away is when the partying came in. And now this is when things got really destructive. So about age 23-ish, I graduated college. I did that 5th year of high school. So I was a little bit older than most when I graduated college, but from 23 to 38 was pretty much a decline a decline in life, but an increase in the party. And so when I was 23, I had the job and I would go to work, and it was an easy data entry job at a bank. just out of college job. Mm-hmm. And so it was really easy for me to go out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night and make it to work on Monday, or make it to work every one of those days, because, first of all, when you're younger, you can recover a little better.
Yeah. Good old days.
But, yeah, I know. The resilience of youth.
Exactly.
So in that time, I met a girl, we got married, and we were in North Carolina at the time. And then we moved to Florida. When we got to Florida, things didn't work out. And it was kind of, I just realized that marriage wasn't for me. That being in that relationship there was no happiness there for me in the long term. So that ended, and I moved to Miami when I was 29, 30-ish. Mm-hmm. And that's when the partying really picked up. So basically I went from having this tennis career, which was, a governor in my life, kind of a control switch in my life. I had maybe a year or two of being single, and then I jumped in right into basically a marriage. So I had another control switch on my life. And so now I'm 29 years old. And for the first time in my life, really, I have 0 control switches on my life. And so, my internal locus of control was like non-existent, and so everything, I just jumped right into, I became a commercial real estate broker in Miami. And that was when it was 2004, and the market was just like on fire. Mm-hmm. Basically you show up at work and they give you checks for $10,000.
Oh my God.
And it's like, okay, this is fun. Like I can do this.
Yeah.
And so, Miami, commercial real estate, money. And a lot of money. Yeah. And single.
And single.
So so it's like, the pitfall, the joy was awesome, but the pitfalls were everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so for 3 years, I actually did meet a girl shortly after that, but for 3 years, it was like, just the destruction just exponentially grew every 6 months, to the point where, I started fighting with my family. I told this massive lie to my family about being caught with drugs outside of a club in Miami because I needed money, and because I'd just blown all my money one weekend partying. Like, there was just these consequences were starting to show up in my life big time. Mm-hmm. And it came to a head in 2007 when I had been up all night partying. And I left my car in Coral Gables, which is by Coconut Grove where I was living. And I went back to get my car, and of course, no sleep, hadn't brushed my teeth, like still in my clothes the night before. And I was looking around my car for my wallet, and I went through a red light and T-boned a car and it wasn't my first DUI, but it was the DUI that kind of triggered. I had gotten a DUI when I was much younger, maybe like early 20s. And so I spent a night in jail in Miami, and the next morning, it was kind of like, and then, like I said, this was like the head of everything coming to a head. Like, my girlfriend had left me for a month or two before that. We just got back together. Mm-hmm. My family was like, "What are you doing?" Like, my sisters would call me crying. My one sister would call me crying. My other sister cut me out of her life because she's like, "I can't. Like, your lifestyle is too intense for me. I can't do this. I can't watch you do this." Fighting with my mom, fighting with my dad. It was just really disastrous, like chaos everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so, and I felt it too, but I didn't see it as a problem, and so much as like, I just need a break. Like, I just need a timeout. Mm-hmm. And so I got a lawyer in Miami, and my parents were like, everyone was like, you should probably go away for 30 days to a rehab, just like, so that the courts see that you're doing something about this. And my girlfriend was like, please go away. And I'm like, that sounds kind of nice. Like, getting away from all this. Like, it sounds like I need a break. So at this point, it's important to mention that all those trips to the hospital as a kid, those were my relief as a kid. Like, it was hard for me. It was a lot for me to be out into the world and feel those threats and have that vigilance all the time. Was exhausting. Mm-hmm. It was really exhausting. So when I was in the hospital for those 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and they weren't like consecutive, it was like a week here, a week there. But I remember being in the hospital and just feeling like, like I can just like relax, and I'm safe. And I never felt that out in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, to this day, like, I actually walk into a hospital and I'm like, oh, this feels good to be here. Mm-hmm. And like, everyone's like, that's weird. I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, my experience of it was like, this was my savior. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I looked at rehab as like another one of those, like, oh, please, like, yes, like, it takes so much energy to be in this world with my social anxiety, with the drinking out of control, the responsibilities was like, it was a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I went away for the 28 days, came out, stayed sober for about 2 weeks. And then, but my intention, even in the rehab, I would never say, like, everyone introduces themselves like, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. And I would never say it because I didn't believe it. So I would just be like, I'm Sam. I'm here in rehab. Like, it just never, and then everyone, the counselors were always like, don't you know you're an alcoholic? I'm like, I don't think I am.
Yeah.
And so,
Denial.
I mean,
first sign.
Yeah, denial. Yeah, 100%. Like the writings, I've had, again, that was my third DUI, but like,
yeah,
the consequences, I'm like, it's just, I had a bad stretch or a bad weekend or a bad night or I'm unlucky. And so I was like, all I need is just like, I need a timeout, like just regroup and I'll be good to go. So I started drinking about 2 weeks later, and within another 2 weeks, it was right back to where it was before. So what it looked like is basically I'll start drinking on a Thursday or Friday night, and it'll be Monday or Tuesday, and I'm still drinking, doing cocaine.
Wow.
And that was kind of my routine. And so in that 4 or 5 day period, I don't call my girlfriend, I don't call my family. I end up over on South Beach in a hotel doing whatever with whoever. And it's like, it's complete just disaster.
And like, can you remember what was driving it? Were you just trying to feel something, escape? Can you identify what the driver was?
Yeah, absolutely. The driver was that I didn't love myself. I had when I say I didn't love myself, it wasn't even like I was trying to love myself. I didn't even know about the concept of self-love. Right. Because I had spent so much of my life feeling broken and feeling like I'm fixing something and fighting, and that fight or flight mode, like always fight or flight, that I didn't have time to think about loving myself. And not that sounds kind of like excusey, quote unquote. No. But at the same time, like it's like I just never thought about it.
No one teaches you.
No one teaches you, especially. And so what I got taught was like kids would make fun of me for my breathing, or like I'm a burden on my family because we're always having to go to the hospital, or I had to get allergy shots every week. And it's like this time commitment, this financial commitment. And like the thing about team sports is like, if I have an asthma attack in the middle of a soccer game, I'm a burden to my team. So I had like basically everything that's not self-love just fed me, fed to my, So really what it was is that I just didn't have, I didn't love who I was. I wanted to feel different. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be included. I didn't want to miss out. I felt FOMO fueled a lot of this in the sense of like, I felt like as a child being so sheltered and having to miss out on so much stuff that one of my best friends. He's like, you were trying to make up for lost time. That was part of it. Yeah. But it really came down to the fact that like, I just hoped that like, I always thought like, if I get a great girlfriend or a great job or I make enough money, like this won't be a problem anymore. Yeah. Again, like, but never looking at like, what is it about myself that is driving this? And it was the fact that like, I just didn't like the way I felt, the way I looked, the way I showed up. I felt like a fraud in life. And that was the major fuel for it. Wow. And so basically that cycle of like destruction, rehab went on for 5 more years until I was 38 years old. And then and all this too was like, so I was in Miami for that first one. About a year later, I moved to North Carolina, back to North Carolina, where I went to college. Things got worse there. I got cancer in my mouth, oral cancer from drinking. Fell off a balcony 35 feet off the second story of a bar. Ended up in the trauma unit. And the thing about that one was that I woke up in the trauma unit on a Monday morning after a football game. I was supposed to be on a plane to Vermont because my grandmother had a stroke the previous Thursday. And she was basically on her deathbed. And I was supposed to go to Vermont to say goodbye and attend her funeral. And so, but I woke up in the trauma unit. And so I missed all of that. And so that's still like, that's one I'll never get over. Yeah. That's one that I just have to just not suck it up, but like, it's a tough one. Yeah. And so, all this stuff to me meant like, I was in like that, like live life to the fullest mode, but it was I like to say there's 2 ways to use the term fuck it. There's fuck it, like I'm going to rage and like, let's go. Yeah. Like fuck it, like you only live once. The very, very destructive way to use it. Now, and I'll get to the other way in a second, but, so 38 years old, I moved up and down the East Coast like 4 times looking for, again, external locus of control. Like something will save me. This place will save me. Like I'll be better in North Carolina. I'll be better in Delray Beach. I'll be better back in North Carolina. And it always ended up a disaster because that never works. So I moved back to North Carolina with my girlfriend, and we, again, didn't work out. So she moved back to California where she was from, and I was drunk maybe 3 weeks later, and I had been sober for a year at this point.
Wow.
Because I had a really, really bad experience in Delray Beach, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I really need to be sober. Like this is not working at all. But again, a year later, I'm like, oh, I think it's fixed. I think I can probably drink again. And for 2 months I drank, and it was a complete sprint of 2 months. Like I ended up in the hospital 4 times. My neighbors woke me up in my front yard a few times. 8 nights in jail for a DUI in North Carolina. That I had my dog in the car with me. He went to the pound. Lost my house. My commercial real estate career was over. And it ended with me at 4 a.m. sitting at my kitchen table. Drug dealer had just left. Friends had just left. And the previous 15 years of my life, really the previous 38 years of my life, all came knocking on my door is the best way to describe it. And I was just sitting there with all of it. And I had this, like, I was just like shaking with fear. Like the sun was going to come up in 4 hours and I couldn't face the next day. But what it was is that I kind of knew, like I had an inner knowing that like tomorrow's going to come and this has to end. I'm like, I'm not ready to face that yet. And so I called 911 and said, you guys need to take me into the psych ward because I'm having some really bad thoughts. And truth be told, I wasn't really having bad thoughts, but the only thought I was having was I can't do tomorrow. Like I can't face the day. And this has to stop. Like I need this needs to stop. I don't know what the rest of my life is going to look like, but I know that I can never, ever do this again. Like this has to end. And so my best thinking was like, I need to go to a psych ward and then figure out my next move, which was go to rehab in Michigan and then another rehab in Utah and then a rehab and then sober living in Utah. And I ended up in San Francisco. Now, this is where the other side of the fuck-its comes in. So there's a destructive side of it, and then there's a courageous side of it. So if you like, when I knew that like if I had to do this, build this new life in San Francisco, that I was gonna have to just say like all this thing. Like I learned to love going to bars to watch football, or going to concerts or festivals, or all these things that basically are associated with like drinking events, football games, sporting events. I love all those things, but I knew I can't drink, but I have to figure out how to go to these things. I have to figure out how to go on dates sober. I have to figure out how to meet new people sober. And it was basically fuck it to the fears and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I had to move. That was the big trigger or the big catalyst for me to like build this new life in San Francisco. If I want, like, fuck it, take the risk. Go be like, I lost my job as a recruiter after about 6 months in San Francisco, which was a blessing because that was awful. But, I literally walked out of the office on Thursday and said, I'm going to be a personal trainer. And that's coaching, helping other people. First it started with like physical body, nutrition, physical fitness. And then it moved into about 5 years sober. I moved into recovery coaching. So I would help guys, like, not so much put down the drink and get sober, but like once they did that, it's really like I would help them recalibrate their life. And then from there, that moved into a lot of mental health coaching, anxiety, depression, stuff like that. And it then moved into what I do now is men's work. I coach men. I facilitate men's groups. I basically facilitate a men's community where like I provide a space for men to do what I did, which is like talk about all the trauma they've ever experienced, everything they're afraid to admit, everything that they think if they admit will ruin their marriage or ruin their job or ruin them. Like I provide a space for them to come and say, I'm scared of this. Like, I'm scared that my wife is going to leave me because of X, Y, Z. I let them cry and I let them laugh and all this stuff. And so that's really what brought me to where I am today, as far as being the thought leader, the speaker. And again, the corporate culture consultant too is part of that, is like creating a safe environment in the workplace that, not the toxic work environment, getting away from that and creating a place where people can come and say, I don't know. Like to say I don't know is one of the most powerful phrases in all of language. Yeah. To be able to say I don't know and feel safe saying that, because we've been taught all along, like from school, we were graded on what we don't know and punished for what we don't know. And so we learned that it's not okay to not know. And so, to create an environment where people can say I don't know is invaluable.
Yeah. Wow. That is,
Yeah,
that is an
that
insane story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, and when you speak about it, does it feel like a different life? Does it even feel like that was you?
Yeah, 100%. Like I sometimes think like, did I really live in Miami? Like, like there's a detachment from it, but there's also like a wow factor. Like, oh my gosh, like that all happened, but I often say like I've lived several lives before. And honestly, I think I've lived lives previous to even being on this planet at this time. Like I think there's other things, like there's karma, like my journey is something that I chose, 100% chose, because of some sort of karmic soul cleansing that I need to do from a past life of whatever it was. There was something that I chose that this life was going to be the time when I cleanse all of that stuff for the next one.
And give back. I mean, now you're giving back so much. So your life now is dedicated to supporting, holding space, empowering so many people. And it's incredible because
thank you.
That's what, I mean, your story is so, I mean, it almost is like, how is this even true? But again, it's like it's such a massive transformation and you're not letting it just go to waste.
No. So one of the catalysts was that my sister Amanda, my older sister, she passed away in 2018 from alcoholism and mental illness. But she was the silent sufferer, and I was not the silent sufferer. But like I recognize that there's people that do this in silence because they're afraid. They don't have the place to come and say, "I'm struggling, I'm hurting." So like those are the ones that really need the help because those are the ones that never get asked. So that's a big reason that I do what I do.
Okay. And so that was 8 years ago that you were sitting at that table. Now you're looking at things. You're so self-aware. I mean, you speak about your traumas and, how it manifests throughout your life and all of that. So what kind of help did you get? Like, did you have coaches, therapists? You were in rehab for a while, but what really helped you?
It was, I had therapists. I went to therapy a lot. It's been an evolution. I'd say one of the most important things that I did was I aligned myself with other men that I could get vulnerable with, that I could say like, I'm struggling, and went into I did men's weekends at places where you can go and cry and you can say like, holy crap. Like you can look at other men and other men can say, you're okay. Like, you're okay, bro. You're not broken anymore. Like you're give you a hug and be like, I see you. To hear that from because a lot of it is like, no one knows, no one sees, no one feels, like no one gets it. And when another guy can say like, bro, I get it. Like, I see you. Like, I'm here for you. And then, so from having that is like the bedrock of it all. On top of that bedrock is things like breath work. I started recently diving into the plant medicine stuff. And because therapy, a lot of times therapy can be, unless you can get into a deep state place, it's a lot of what you know, and you operate in the cycles of what you know, and you keep repeating the same things. And that's what I was doing with AA, for example. It ended up being a lot of repetition for me. So I had to step away from AA and just search for the things that I didn't know. And so, using plant medicines, whether that's DMT or ayahuasca or mushrooms, whatever it may be, it allows me to tap into other things, like things I don't know, and feel connection, and to learn. Like when you go into those places and breath work is the same way. When you go into that breath work and you have that release, basically what you're doing is it's like you're tearing away a callus, or you're chipping away at plaque on your life that basically has been protecting you. So I feel like the first 6 or 7 years of my recovery from the addiction was just doing work to get to the point where I can really heal. And then the past 2 years have been the actual healing, because it was like I had to get to the point where I was solid enough that I could start chipping away at that layer, that layer of hard concrete. And then once you get that layer of concrete, that's when I started getting into the past life regressions and the childhood traumas, and looking at my experience in the womb with my mother. My mother thought she had cancer for the first 4 months that she was pregnant with me. Wow. So to say that that's not an issue
Yeah.
Like that's a huge thing. Like,
yeah.
and
the energetics.
No, yeah, the energetics. Then no blame. I mean, she didn't know, but like, what do you do when you have cancer? You fight against it and you try and get it out of your body. So basically, that energy was like, I'm not lovable. I'm rejected. Like you're not worthy. And then being born with an umbilical cord on my head and fighting, like to be able to look at all that stuff, that never would have happened if I didn't become willing to see what I don't know and get out of that cycle.
Yeah. What are you most excited about, like now, but moving forward? Like what projects do you have that you're really looking forward to, or what are you currently involved in that you really love and feel like this is your calling, or maybe all of it?
Yeah, all of it. But I think that the speaking, I have a TED Talk coming up on May 1st. I'm really excited about.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so that's going to be, thank you. That, and then I think that just this year I've actually created a community of men called the Conscious Warrior Brotherhood that is really, really exciting to me, because I know the healing that I've experienced, and like I'm just so excited to provide that level of healing and place for men to do this. And then to be able to do that, to get on stages and talk about this, like, and do this, like a podcast is a stage, and to get on stages and talk about this and just spread this message and just let people know that it's okay not to be okay. You know, people get so wrapped up in like, I can't not be okay. That's the big fear of men. If I appear not okay, my wife will leave me, my boss will fire me, my employees will leave me. Like, it's not okay not to be okay in this world. And like, that's where so much stuff happens, is that fear of not being okay. Because if you're not okay, you can't just say I'm okay and expect it to go away.
Right. So, and that is because of culture, like society tells men you cannot have any like cracks to your facade. You have to be strong and solid. Is that where that comes from?
Yeah. It's, like and one of those things is that, that fear of appearing a man. When men can start to sink into like, I'm more of a man if I can say this is wrong with me, let me go handle it, and then I'll be stronger for it.
So would you say that's your mission, is to kind of change the narrative around masculinity and what that means?
100%. Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, one of the things there is like, we talk about toxic masculinity as being a big buzzword right now. And it's
it is.
And so the way I like to look at that is like, the behavior associated with that masculine energy is toxic for sure. But the actual reason for that is the wounded masculinity. It's a wounded masculine energy. The men have been wounded, and all that does is it manifests itself in toxic behavior, which is anger, destruction, abuse. That like being. I like to say, be a warrior, but don't be at war. If you could be a warrior and not at war, that's the divine masculine. The toxic masculine, the wounded masculine, is at war with everything. And that's where so many problems arise. Okay.
Yeah. I've been diving into the masculine and feminine, both those things, and learning so much, because again, this lingo it's new in a way.
Yeah. It's totally new. I mean, like, I think that we're just starting to realize, like, the masculine and feminine energy, how they can coexist, and how we have both of them, because we get so, our nature, like we get so lost in one or the other, but to balance that doing of the masculine energy and the being and the receiving of the feminine energy is, I mean, that's where real strength comes from, when you can hold space in that balance.
Right. Definitely. Where can people find you? Because you have a lot of content out there that is very, consumable.
Thank you very much. Instagram's the best place, and it's at Sam Gibbs Morris. That's GIBBS.
Okay.
And then I'm on LinkedIn too at just my name, Sam Morris. Those are the two big platforms I spend my time on.
Cool. And you're doing a TED Talk. Now it's virtual.
It's going to be, I will be at the venue and it will be live streamed.
Okay.
But there's going to be nobody in the audience. So it'll be virtual in that respect.
Okay. Will we be able to see that? Or is
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. I will definitely be posting on all my channels about how to see that, how to view that, get tickets, whatever.
Oh, well, we had a little bit of a Wi-Fi problem. Well, I encourage you to check out Sam on Instagram at Sam Gibbs Morris. I'll link everything in the show notes. And also, if you can, check his TED Talk, which is coming up in the next couple days on May 1st. It's titled, Why You Need to Stop Settling for Hope. Knowing Sam and the content that he puts out, this is going to be really, really good. So I encourage you to check it out. I want to acknowledge and thank Sam for showing up and truly being seen and sharing his life story up until now and really showing all of us that you can truly and completely transform your life when you choose the path of self-love and then choosing to serve others. Everything shifts, everything changes. Thanks again for being on this podcast, and cheers to carving your own fucking path. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.